then comes the law. Upon first introduction, Israel's response is, whatever you tell us to do, we are perfectly capable of doing it. That's the Hebrew syntax. Whenever they say, tell God we'll do whatever he says, they actually say, tell God we're perfectly capable of doing whatever he says to do. What they should have said to God was, no thank you, we choose Abraham's covenant. Because Paul will come along in the book of Galatians and say, the covenant that God made with Abraham could not be annulled by the covenant that he made with Moses at Sinai. God could not just say, we're going to change the rules. He's not allowed. I want to say that again. God is not allowed to just arbitrarily change the rules. So whatever covenant he cut with Abraham, the problem is Abraham wasn't involved, so Abraham couldn't break it. So God's on the hook, so to speak, to Abraham. So he introduces the Mosaic covenant, and Israel voluntarily puts themselves under it and says, whatever you say do, we can do. But we don't want to be too intimate with you in it. Moses, you go talk to God for us. And so God stops dealing corporately with Israel and begins only dealing with Moses. And Moses, you know the story, and here we go. And before long, we're marching around Mount Sinai. Now, you know, it only took a few weeks. Some scholars say 14 days to get to that place. However long it took, we're going to jump in our time machine and fast forward 2 years. Because by the time we get to the book of Numbers, go with me to Numbers chapter 11. The children of Israel are 2+ years removed from the land of Egypt. Now remember that Israel has had the cares of this life, they've had the law, and now they've had 24 months of manna. Every day, fine, white, sugary, sweet manna. 2 years worth. Simple, easy, beautiful. Keyword, free. That makes it pretty good right there. And then Numbers chapter 11, verse 4. Let's start in verse 1. Now when the people complained, it displeased the Lord, for the Lord heard it, and his anger was aroused. So the fire of the Lord burned among them and consumed some in the outskirts of the camp. Man, aren't you glad we're not under the law anymore? Then the people cried out to Moses, and when Moses prayed to the Lord, the fire was quenched. So he called the name of the place Taberah, because the fire of the Lord had burned among them. Now the mixed multitude who were among them yielded to intense craving. So the children of Israel also wept again and said, who will give us meat to eat? We remember the fish which we ate freely in Egypt, the cucumbers, the melons, the leeks, the onions, and the garlic. But now our whole being is dried up, and there's nothing at all except this manna before our eyes. Now the manna was like coriander seed, and its color like the color of bdellium. And the people went around and gathered it and ground it on millstones, beat it on mortar, cooked it in pans, made cakes out of it. And its taste was like the taste of pastries prepared with oil. I got to ask you, what happened to the manna? It started out beautiful, fine, white, and sweet like honey. And by Numbers chapter 11, they're beating it, grilling it, frying it, baking it, recreating it, smashing it, and the sugar's gone. Now it tastes like oil. Why did God change the ingredients in the manna in 2 years from Egypt to here? I say to you, it never changed at all. It used to be lovely. It still should be lovely. But the spirit of the people had changed due to marching around a mountain, due to murmuring and complaining, due to working their fingers to the bone. The very taste of the manna changed inside of their mouths. Jesus was no less lovely than he had ever been, but the perception of Jesus would change to the point that we don't think he is who he used to be. And if it could happen in Israel, can it happen in the church? And I say I was raised in it. To where when I first saw him, he was beautiful. He was fine. He was white as snow, and he was, and I mean in purity and sweetness. He was gorgeous. There was no problem he could not handle. There was no sickness he could not heal. There was no issue he could not solve. I could talk to him every second of the day. No limitations. I could say anything I wanted to him. Anything I wanted. He loved me and I loved him. And then I grew up. And I got theologically smarter. And I got busy. And I got active. And I entered ministry and I built churches. And I saw people saved and lives changed. And I put my hands on the spiritual plow and refused to look back. And my prayer life became a time on the clock. My moments with him became moments with him that were regulated and segmented. I felt like he refused to show up without certain concessions on my part. That I had to pray long enough, even to the point that I had to dress a certain way for him to anoint me, for him to bless me. I had to use certain words for him to move upon me, for him to use me. My anointing was closely attached to all of the regulations and the rules and the things that I could do. I became judgmental and cynical. I found problems in everybody around every turn, both in the world and in the church. People became an issue. And Jesus was harder to find. Day after day after day, where is that simple Jesus? Christ has never changed. He's as beautiful today as he was the day that you met him.